folks, as I said, we are at the tech stage. Before I announce the next panel, I also want to take a small moment to announce what's happening at the Disrupt stage. There's a very interesting conversation that's going on over there called Conversations and Commerce. It's a fireside chat between Shashank Kumar, the co-founder and MD of Razorpay, and Sandhya Devanathan, Vice President India at Meta. Let's come back to the tech stage, right? Developers in the audience, again, if you can just raise your hands, I just want to gauge. Fair enough. All right. So the topic that we're going to start is something that's pretty close to my heart as the culture head. If you ask any developer on the floor a very simple question, which is, where do you want to spend most amount of your time as a developer? Unanimously, almost everyone will answer that you want to spend most of your time coding something. But that's really not the reality as of today. And that's exactly what the next panel is going to talk about. And we are naming it the Holy Grail of Developer Experience. To moderate the panel, let me please invite Kamlesh Chandnani, Principal Front-End Engineer from Razorpay. And I have an amazing set of panelists over here. Let's invite Madhusudan Shekar, AI CTO at Google, Manoj Chandrasekaran, Enterprise Technologist at AWS, Manoj Agarwal, co-founder DevRev. It's an honor to have all of you over here. I'm personally taking notes from this session. Over to you, folks.
Okay, all right. So it's been wonderful to have the brightest minds, I would say. So before we begin, right, I want to start with a question. How many of you over here have been part of the conversations where you have been questioned as, you know, we used to deliver these things quicker when we were like a 10-member team versus now when we are a 100-member team? Quick raise of hands. Okay. And how many of you feel that, you know, as Chetty mentioned, that I want to just sit and code, but that is what, like there are so many obstacles in my way that prevents me from doing that. So before we begin, we as developers, like we look forward to what? Gratifying outcomes. Like we want to solve a problem that has some impact on our customers, right? But often as we scale, there are so many things that happen as the org evolves that the environment that the developers are in, that gets impacted. So that is where the discussion is about today. So we will be talking about how developer experience sits at the center of delivering world-class customer experiences and what are some of the obstacles that comes our way. So before taking much of your time, I'll just welcome all our panels. So Madhusudan, who's from Google, and so we'll just have the first question from Madhu. So being at Google, right, and Madhu is known for like, you know, transforming and building solutions for Fortune 500 companies. So you can ask him anything and everything about tech. So how has been, like, in your journey, how has developer experience impacted the customer experiences?
Thanks, Kamlesh, for inviting me over here. It's been exciting to see this. At the end of the day, definitely, right? I mean, it's actually a fairly obvious thing. Like when you have, you know, good developer experiences, the amount of effort that goes towards building great products becomes a fairly natural outcome. I mean, developers are able to put in the right amount of energy, the focus that's required, build the empathy for the customer, and then be able to deliver the right set of outcomes, right? And you can see this across a number of places where you see developer experiences prioritized in organizations. I've seen that inside of Google. I've been with Amazon before. I've seen that inside of Amazon before. You know, when I built my team at Tata Motors, this was ages ago, a little over, I don't know, 15 years ago, we put a lot of emphasis on making sure the team is actually up and running correctly, has the right set of tools, has the right environment, so on and so forth. Very different era, but primarily we were able to get a connected vehicle platform up and running in about 6 months, right? And deliver it to people who were not even aware of technology. So I have seen this happen again and again. And I would definitely say it's a key priority in the nature of, if you want to ensure that you deliver products that have empathy of the customer and you're able to work from there, you're going to have a good developer experience built for your team internally. Because that reduces friction. Result is lesser downtimes, more uptime, it means more trust, more availability, customers believe you.
Sure. Okay. So the next question is for you, Mani. So Mani is known for, he brings a wealth of knowledge because in his role he speaks with a lot of CXOs, architects, developers, consults them, advises them, and guides them on how to scale the orgs. So according to me, developer experience has 4 key pillars. The primary is the tools and infrastructure that a developer needs, and are they enabled with that. The second is the cross-team collaborations, how often they are able to do cross-team collaboration seamlessly. The third one is around the culture and innovation that is there in the org. The fourth one is around how basically we are enabling the developers or how we are growing them individually, right? So based on your conversations, how different orgs or how different scale of orgs, they react to developer experience? And how have you told them the positive sides of it?
Sure. Thanks, Kamlesh. I think thanks for the opportunity. And also thanks to all the audience. I know this is before lunch, so a big sacrifice on your part, I think. So to answer your question again, Kamlesh, so I depend, so I've been with AWS/Amazon for now more than 8 years now. So a lot of things that we have, what we call as the culture within Amazon, also kind of percolates down to all my customer conversations, right? I mean, knowingly or unknowingly, right? So again, to answer your question, while those 4 pillars are very important, but at the same time, I mean, the end of the day, people want to ship quality products, which are bug-free, which meet the requirements and so on and so forth, right? So in the sense that my take whenever I talk to customers are a few things. Some of them are related to how Amazon does things. I also speak to a lot of things like, for example, we have this thing called Amazon culture of innovation, working backwards. So we try to teach, I mean, from the culture side of things. For example, we have this famous thing that before we even start a product or a project, we write a press release, okay? So that is our kind of an, our kind of a requirements doc. It's as if let's assume that I'm starting a product today. I write as if what is going to be my press release, right? So that kind of defines from there, that's the culture part of it, right? So then there are a lot of mechanisms that we also share with a lot of customers, things like how big your team is, which kind of directly reflects to 2 pizza teams, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of this are the culture side of things, coupled with the fact that end of the day, we also want to, some of the interesting statistics that we have seen, which is a little bit scary, is we have seen that a median developer nowadays is spending very less time writing new code, okay? Sure. So some statistics like, for example, daily, what we have seen is a customer is only able to spend just an hour, okay? The rest of the time is spent on a lot of other associated activities. I'm not even talking about water cooler conversation, smoking chai break and all, but they're spending a lot of times on other stuff, which we try to quantify it and make sure that, whenever we do an assessment kind of a thing, we are able to reduce that, and end of the day, they can ship products faster and quicker and clear your backlogs well, right? So these are a few things. So cultural and mechanisms plus toolings.
Okay, that's a good insight. So how or what is the general resistance about developer experience, or do you think it's an awareness problem?
So it's both. I think it's also a combination of multiple things. I think people are now aware because social media, et cetera. I think it's just that people have become very risk averse. Okay. So they are they want to resist things. They want to do things the tried and trusted way because, I mean, they just don't want to take risk. I mean, some of them, right? Of course, the startups and others are in a different league. I mean, they want to, break things and, ship faster, right? But from other medium-sized to larger companies, they tend to be more risk-averse. So the goal would be to kind of make sure that they can experiment at the same time, not fall flat on their face.
So how do you explain developer experience to, say, a mid-stage startup? Like, how do you explain them what exactly developer experience mean?
So again, there's no one rule kind of a thing. When I talk to the CXOs or even at the architects and developer level, I see a kind of an assessment on where we could initially, I mean, see, the thing that doesn't resonate well with a lot of customers is when you have a very long cycle, you say, I want to do like a 3 months, 6 months proof of concept, introducing new tools or culture and stuff like that. So initially the goal is around quick wins. It could be as simple as, like, can I help them to improve documentation, right? I mean, that is, a big, you might know, right? I think you are been in the front end thing, people just want to ship code. They think that they're the only people who are going to write code forever, right? I think those kind of things. So easy wins first and then gradually get into the system.
Wonderful. Okay, coming to Manoj. So before I ask my question to Manoj, how many of you have heard about DevRev? Okay, few. What intrigued me about DevRev at the first glance is the name. The name says Dev is developer, the Rev is the revenue part, which is customers. And the name is baked inside the tool. So, how has been, so Manoj has been working with, he used to work with Nutanix before, which is a company known for the highest customer NPS of 92. And how has been your journey of codifying a lot of these things into DevRev as a tool? Because I think often developer experience sometimes comes as subjective thing or maybe very qualitative rather than quantitative. So how have you quantified those things into the tool?
First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm super, super excited to be here. I know that many of you are looking for lunch. I thought it was already lunchtime. That's what happens in the US by noon. It takes you lunchtime. So thank you for being here. Our previous company, Nutanix, I don't know if you have heard about this company. I joined when we had 50 or so developers. And when I left with Dheeraj Pandey, who is also the founder of Nutanix, we started DevRev. In 2020, we were around 2,200 developers worldwide across 9 different offices. At every year that we were growing, our Net Promoter Score stayed consistently above plus 90. For some of you, if you don't know Net Promoter Score versus the customer satisfaction score, CSAT, when you give a score of 8 out of 10, it's like 80% customer satisfaction score. The same score, when you give it for the Net Promoter Score, it's considered 0. So if you gave anything below 7, it's considered negative score. So number goes from minus 100 to plus 100. So on that score, and we often wondered, what did we do different compared to the rest of the world? And is there a way to codify that and bring it to the world? So that was one insight. And it all came down to what customers are seeking. And when customer comes to you with their problem, whatever that you have given them the, let's say, product, it has to work, obviously. When it doesn't work, does it feel like to the customers that this is the only thing, you are the only customers that I got in terms of the treatment that you do to the customer? Now, how is that going to happen inside the company? Inside the company, now you're talking about a technical product, and you have so many departments, stakeholders inside the company. How do you really bring them together? How do you really share the information? How do you really go and prioritize that? How do you really get it to the right people in the organization to be able to go and solve that problem and get back to the customer? Now, we did that at Nutanix. It was very, very expensive. Now, I'm sure that many of you, all of us actually experience this. You get to the meeting, you have people who are coming to that meeting who has, we call it the title, biggest title, with the loudest voice in the room, kind of making the decision for you, right? And I often wondered, was it because of that title and loudest voice, or it was something else? And at least my assessment was it was the information asymmetry that existed. That person brought a different information on the table because they have access to that information. Not every single person has the access to that information. So is there a way to bring this information in a system through which that at least the people in the room, if they had the information symmetry, will they make the same decision without that person in the room? So that was like one core insight that we had, with which like we thought that this is something that we should go and solve for. And the other part of that was like, when you look at development side itself, engineering, in 2020, we were doing around $1.6 billion in software revenue. And for that, I was spending close to $400 million just in the R&D alone. So 25% for a technology company kind of makes sense. And to really answer this very, very basic question is, how much of that money was going for my current customer, things that I'm building, how much of that money that I was spending for future of the business. It's like, okay, new verticals, new market segment I want to grow into. And the third category was just to keep the lights on, bug fixes, code refactoring, tech debt removal, something that people call it in the maintenance category, right? And that's the third category. And there was this fourth category that I was more interested in to understand, which didn't belong in these three categories. And this, which simply meant that if I could find that, I can simply kill this, put people over to the first three category. At least my sense was that it was probably 30% belonged in that category. It's just hidden inside. It's not that developer wants to work on those things, just that they don't even know what they're working on, it is useful thing for the company or not. So when we think about the developer productivity or developer experience, it's also about removing all of that noise. How do you really bring that kind of information even in front of the developer? Like obviously tools and systems that we can talk about it, but the core mission for the DevRev then just became the Dev and Rev. Here basically, how do you really bring them together? How do you really even propagate that information all the way from customers back to the people who are building it? And when they build it, how do you really bring it back all the way back to the customers, close that loop with the customer?
That's wonderful insight, I think. Yeah, so I think majority of the times what happens is, as you rightly pointed, that we build things looking like the way legacy tools have taught us is like everything is put as like a task. You just finish the task and move on. But getting that sense of gratitude for a developer is what sparks the fuel of a developer, and they become like a 10x developer. So coming to the next question, in this like world of AI, right? How do you, like this question is for all three of you, how do you rethink developer experience?
Okay. AI to us at Google is primarily an ability to accelerate what the developer workforce is. I'm going to add on to what Manoj was talking earlier, right? That fourth bucket you're talking of. So one of the things that we have invested at Google for a very, very long time, and we've published a ton of papers on the subject, is around developer productivity, measuring this, understanding what this is. So productivity is only one of the angles in the overall developer experience. You know, what is the throughput they can give you, etc. And then there is like 400 odd metrics that we have published on what you track and how you manage this. And one thing that we constantly hear, and we run an engineering SAT survey every week, we get that feedback from the developers to understand what they like to do, whether things changed for them, whether the life is improved, so on and so forth. And in that, one of the things that we very clearly see is that developers want to develop, right? What they don't want to do is to do a lot of that fourth category of work. This could be attending meetings that they could not contribute to. They're okay to attend meetings, but there is a meeting, you just go sit, and 4 other people are talking, and then you come back out again, right? Or you did not have an effective contribution or receive any decent input back either, right? So things like this do happen in many organizations. So there is a whole category of work in that space that is something that they would like to avoid, right? So now when you think of AI, a lot of things, this thing is, what are the aspects that we can employ AI to remove all these kinds of categories? I'm not so sure whether we can, but somewhere in the immediate future, we could probably have a proxy developer go attend that meeting. That will make a lot more sense. But you know, a much more interesting scenario would be like, you know, do I have to write PR notes? Right? Can we generate PR notes? It's a very, very simple thing to do. right? Writing test scripts. I mean, writing regression, unit test scripts is a huge amount of effort, right? That can be accelerated. There's a number of these activities, and then the way to think of it is the way we define this in Google is it's called what we call toil. If you've read any SRE handbook, in SRE we define this word called toil. Toil is effectively things that are automatable, repeatable, done very, very frequently, and not desired to be done, right? People don't want to do it. That toil you have to reduce. So we are primarily looking at AI to reduce toil. So in the case of developers, it will be remove that toil away. In the case of DevOps engineers, remove that toil away, right? So on and so forth. And what this does is it allows them to zone in and focus more on the productive outcome that needs to be produced towards the final product capability that you want to build and where you want to go with that.
Interesting. And what are some examples of these kind of tools or maybe the bets that you have taken to reduce this toil?
So primarily think about it as unit test development, scaffolding code. So some of these are code generators. Some of these are AI-powered code generators. Some of these are documentation writers, summary writers. One of the things that we have a statistic on is that if you take a C++ code base, like one source file, a CPP file, right? We write a lot of code in C++. You will see that it changes hands 8 times in 5 years. The same source file. The owner of that file who's going to touch it and do something with it has changed 8 times in 5 years. This is a statistic that we have internally. Now look at it. Every time you go open the source file, for any developer, you look at somebody else's code, you first have to understand that code. So we have a mechanism where you can chat with that code. You can ask, what does it do? And the worst thing you can have is documentation that says something and the code that does something else. Right? And that's horrible because you read and you think that's what it's doing, but actually the code is doing something else. So the better way is to actually chat and figure out what it's doing. So things like that. Ability to write readable code. One of the most horrendous things is to read code that nobody can understand. So assisting developers write readable code and the mechanism to assist them read that code. So we have developed an internal LLM, very similar to what you see publicly called Gemini. We have an internal LLM specifically targeted at developers for the internal Google code base. That primarily focuses on giving all this throughput. The stat that we have today is that 25% of the code that we write in Google today is AI generated.
That's amazing.
Right? That's the velocity through which we are able to run. And it's not just for classical software. It is also for writing software for AI, training, testing, validation, the entire life cycle. Because software engineering or development is not only about writing, code. There's a whole plethora of functions a software engineer has to do. It covers that entire gamut and array of their activity.
That's really wonderful. I think I would add on to that thing. So because Google is such a big org, right? There are so many teams building so many tools and softwares or too many documentation to go about it. And I think we were just discussing this, like how do you tell people, say, when I as a developer, I am working on certain things, I don't know what tool to use. Like, it's like I have a Swiss knife. I don't know what should I use for what purpose, right? So.
All right, so I'll continue forward on that, right? So one of the things that Google, many of you I'm sure have heard of the paper, Attention is All You Get. I'm sure everybody in the AI space, even remotely today, knows the paper, which came in 2017. But Google also published a paper in 2019, which talked about how to get people to use tools, right? And one of the things we practice inside of Google is it's called train on the toilet, right? It's an area where you get tremendous focus, right? So any new tools, practices, mechanics, like, hey, this is how you write unit test code. This is how you maintain transient variables. This is how you manage state. Think about it. Good practices are all a simple snippet written in about a couple of 100 words that are actually posted in our toilets. Wow. Right? You should be able to read this in 2 minutes. We have, and this white paper, when you read the published design, and this actually won the Distinguished Paper Award in 2019. This paper actually publishes statistics on a tool that was released in public for internal usage, etc., low adoption, They do a TOT, and then the curve just takes off. So we have that a lot, and you can go to any Google office anywhere in the world. You walk into a loo, you will see something to train you. Wow. It's very, very powerful. I mean, I have never missed one. And as soon as you read it, you'll, I got to do this.
So it's a good incentive to return to office.
I have my opinions on that. I will not go there, but definitely, yeah. But we also publish that online. So if you...
Wow. Okay, all right. Do you, Mani or Manoj, do you have anything to add on how do you rethink developer experience in this AI era?
No, I think just a small couple of points. So one thing people generally equate developer experience is only with writing new code. But from my experience, there's a lot of stuff. I think while Madhu talked about testing and stuff like that, the other areas where this also applies equally well in my conversations with customers is there's also a lot of legacy code that is out there. So how do you deal with it? How do you migrate it from X to Y? Those kind of things. That's also an important aspect. And the second or maybe even third point is also there are a lot of developers out there who are who have the unfortunate task of having to manage systems, because in smaller startups and things like that, you don't have different roles, right? I mean, the person who's writing the code also has to be on a call, debugging stuff and things like that. So that is also an important area on how AI can help. So I'm seeing that increasingly in the area of things like AI ops, operational investigations. So it's like, I mean, to me, it would be as if that there is like a tenured person who's standing next to you and is able to kind of give you guidance and pointers and stuff like that, right? So that is, in my opinion, it's not just new code testing and stuff like that. It's also around other areas like migration, keeping up with, you are using so many frameworks. How do you deal with, can something new like an AI kind of, can it help do this kind of undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? So those are some additional things that you need to be mindful of.
So Kamlesh, I have a slightly different take. I also want to just say, when you look at companies and even the development organization, there's always these top 10% developers. They don't need any help. They can figure it out. They get things done at the speed, in fact, better than any tool systems that will be out there. Then you look at the bottom 10%. No matter what tools and systems that you give, doesn't really matter. You just have to get them out because they're just not built for what you want them to do. And most of the discussion is around this middle layer that we're talking about, this, let's say, 80% layer. And there, it all just comes down to, obviously we are talking about developer experience, developer productivity, but there is a slightly different way of looking at it, the friction to the developer experience, or call it the impediment to the productivity. And this is where that you start to look at, if I have the CI/CD system, I'm looking at how much time it takes for me to go from this PR that I have raised all the way to deployment to getting into the production. And there are a number of steps that I'm going through, and where is it bottleneck? And if I could go and find that out and go and solve for that, because these people, 80% people, they are not going to go and solve for that. They're just looking for the organization to go and solve for it. Every single one of them that you go and solve, you increase the productivity of the entire organization. And this is where that I think that the AI is going to go and play a big role, because machine has the recall. It can just go and work on large set of data to really go and pinpoint where the problem is, give you the insight, probably also in due course that also go and solve it in real time. So at least I think that there is a big role to play for the AI, especially in the context of those 80% of the people.
Just let me add to that. He actually makes a very important point, right? Generally, when product managers define requirements, etc., before developers begin, there's always typically some kind of a design written, right? Validating design and ensuring that it actually meets product spec is a very interesting nudge area, right? Because we all think they do, they don't. They don't actually sometimes that easily come together. And that's an area where we definitely see AI helping.
Yeah, I think there was a blog that was posted by OpenAI, I think last week I was reading about, where now the agents can also navigate the websites on your behalf. Like they would have like a visual.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Yeah.
That's the easy one. Reading a design document and going back and looking at a product spec, that PRD that was written, and ensuring they actually line up is actually a very interesting area that we see that are helping.
It's like you don't have to write tests anymore. There's a companion who can match the PRD, the design, and then maybe write tests basis that, and then it's like you already have someone who can automate these things.
To an extent, yes. And identify the gaps, right? See, what happens is, he pointed out to this 80% mass, right? That 80% mass developer, if the design does not meet PRD, what they're going to do is they're going to go right and stop. And then you're going to be like, this is not what we wanted. The top 10% will identify the design does not meet PRD. They will go figure it out. The bottom 10% doesn't care about PRD or design either.
Right. I mean, the level of inefficiency, you talk about it. Like anybody who has run, let's say, the development organization and running the sprint, I mean, every day morning that you have to stand up, do 10 minutes stand up, right? And typically that doesn't happen in 10 minutes, it takes an hour. And what do you ask in that? What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? Where is the blocker? Right? That's all that you're asking.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine how wasteful this is? And who is gaining from this? It's mostly the people who actually have to report up. Right? That's what happens. And the question is, can machine can give that answer? Like when you're asking, okay, is it done? When will it get done? That's the question typically, right? And if the machine says that, okay, yeah, this particular, let's say the PR, it's going through right now the stages. At the third stage, it has 100 more tests to finish. 20 tests has already passed. And by the way, based on, that's the current status. And based on the prior skill set that I know of you in the area that you're working on, and your prior record and all that this particular PR will get deployed in the next 3 hours in production. Also predicting the future, right? And these are the kind of things that are possible. Now, can you imagine that giving back that 1 hour back to every single developer from every day? That's huge. Yeah. I think that's the part that we are talking about with the AI, what's going to happen.
Adding on to that, how has AI affected hiring in your respective orgs? Like, what are some of the roles that are no longer required? And what are some of the roles that are actually required?
Okay, I'm going to put it slightly differently here, right? The job descriptions change. The roles continue. The software developer exists, QA engineers exist, at least in the way we structured it at Google, they do exist. SREs exist, so on and so forth. And, product managers exist, so on and so forth. I don't think there's going to be a change there. What's going to happen is the way you are expected to work, the way you will work, the way you will collaborate, those things will change. That's the nitty-gritty, and not the JD that comes out on the public, right? It's the nitty-gritty of what happens every day in your life. That's changing, definitely. Right? You're not going to have a blank screen ever in front of you. You have a PRD, you open the screen, the PRD is red, and 30% of the scaffolding code is up. And you're going to start figuring out what to do. Or if you're going to go fix something, a lot of that is automated for you. So that is there. So the day-to-day job of what you do is getting better. I'll also give that feedback that we are seeing that it is getting better. And yes, there are challenges that we have to run. There are places where AI just goes up and then everything goes for a mucker. And you'll have to sort of work through that. But yes, it's a work in progress in that space. But the roles continue. And in our view, there are enough problems on this planet. We need a lot of software developers.
So to answer your question, see, I'm not going into the space of how are they, shortlisting resumes. I think those aspects, I think the AI is definitely playing a role. I'm not, but from the hiring perspective, I feel still the core principles remain the same, right? I do a lot of interviews as a bar raiser at Amazon. So the fundamentals of how we interview people, what are we looking for, those still remain the same, right? But I think, as Madhu said, there are going to be changes in terms of, what is expected of you, in the requirements change a bit, right? And the other aspect is, in terms of whether jobs will go away and things like that, I'm sure, things are growing at a really rapid pace, right? I think you had this instance, I think, where a few months back, a company claimed that they have cut all their customer service reps, right? But the same company now has come back yesterday saying that they feel that along with the AI, you still need a human touch, right? So I'm not going to name the company. I think you can Google it, right? Those things are evolving as we speak. But I think to answer your basic question, I think the thing that will also, what we as all developers should do also is gain more domain knowledge. The fundamentals, those will not change. That will still be there. I think that's what I can share, right, at this point.
I think, at least when I think about it, if you look at the shelf life of learning itself, like how it has gone down, it used to be like 30 years. You can go and learn something, and that you can use for 30 years. That has shrunk to, let's say, a few years ago, it was like around 6 years that you have to reskill yourself. So 1/6 of you that you have to learn. It just feels like it has shrunk even more now. I don't know whether it is 2 years, whether it is 3 years or something like that. So very first questions that we have to ask, do we have people inside our current organization? Forget about people ask what we are going to go and hire from outside. Are they reskilled to really carry you forward into this next wave or not? Could we really reskill them? I truly believe that people with AI will replace people without AI. That will happen. So first step is to reskill our own people inside the organization, making sure that they can use with all the tools and systems and really learn new way of doing that. That's the only way they'll also hire the right people from outside. Otherwise, that what will happen, that will just stay in this same old pattern. But what will happen also, Kamlesh, the new age company, the newer company, they will start at a very, very different place. They'll start with people with the AI skills. The entire tool chain and systems that they built inside is already AI native. They will move at rapid pace, as opposed to like the companies who haven't really reinvented themselves.
Pretty amazing.
So the baseline, as I said, the baseline for new companies that start today, the starting point is way up forward, right? As opposed to what it was for a company that started, let's say, 7-8 years ago, right? And because you now have all that legacy with you. One of the things that we do a lot of thought work on is this concept of what I call the solo unicorn company, right? There's like one person who builds a unicorn.
It's possible.
It is possible. It's getting very close.
Yes.
Okay, I think we are running closer to the end of the session. I think this has been very amazing discussion. But before we wrap up, I have some rapid fire questions for all three of you. And it has to be one word or one sentence. So let's start. We'll start with you, Madhu. What's the single most underrated aspect of developer experience? One word.
Your table and chair. Sorry, man. That's literally what it is. If you're not sitting and working right, you're in bad shape.
Okay.
But other than that, of course, ensuring that you have the right time to work on the product that you need to produce, prioritizing that is the biggest area. Everything else you need to reduce all the other toil away.
Perfect.
To me, I think security is important. A lot of people, it's an afterthought. So whether it's data security or those aspects, you just rely on all these tools to do it, and then you get dinged by whatever internal or external folks, right? And realize it's too late, right? So whether it's guardrails, data security, data privacy, I think that's an important aspect which is sometimes underrated.
Okay. Manoj, your answer.
Yeah, I think that underrated things, they chase so many things, so many people to get one thing done. It's hard for them. Better provide them something that they don't need to chase people. It's underrated because like the thing is, there is no outcome by chasing. You may not even reach that outcome.
Okay. Sure. Moving on to next, tooling versus culture. Like, which has a bigger impact on developer experience?
Culture.
I think this is an easy one, culture.
Yeah, has to be.
Okay. Next is, finish this sentence. The future of developer experience is...
I mean, it's very cliche to say AI, but I'm going to say something like, it's going to be largely about ensuring developers are able to produce products more efficiently. The developer experience is going to be, the developers are going to be much more front-ended to the consumer today, very soon.
Okay. Mani?
Agentic. So I think we are going into that model where there will be specialized agents for different things. So I would say it's agentic.
DevRev.
Nice plug.
Google.
Okay. Next one. Biggest developer experience pet peeve.
Meetings.
Okay.
I mean, to me, and I think one thing I've realized by talking to a lot of customers is, there are so many gatekeeping and, those kind of aspects. People, even though you might be relying on the new age AI stuff and all, there's still a lot of gatekeeping going on. I think that is a blocker to a lot of innovation and, how fast you can roll things out.
Meetings, gatekeeping.
I think the same.
Okay.
Wasteful meetings. Yeah.
Meetings, I think what he's trying to say is organizational dynamics.
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of a combination of that.
Okay. Last but not the least, if you had a DX magic wand, right? What's that one thing that you would fix it all and once for all?
I answered this before. It's basically an AI agent that will go attend meetings, come back and summarize to me. I think he mentioned that more or less also, like...
Yeah, I said DevRev.
DevRev, yeah, it's the same thing, right? You just need something that goes there, attends the meeting for you, listens to everything, comes back, gives you a summary, and gives your status report there. I mean, that 1 hour meeting can practically become 5 minutes.
Perfect.
To me, context switching, I mean, for me, an ideal AI companion could be something like a Bloomberg terminal. So I just sit there, do stuff, and there would be, if at all I get bored, I would have widgets which like, I can do my Twitter or Netflix and maybe do some stock trading on the side. So without leaving the screen, right? So less context switching and more focus.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah. I do think that we need to get more developer out in the open in front of the customers.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes. That's good. All right. I think it's been wonderful having all of you and getting insights from each one of you and unique insights. We have like a couple of minutes left, probably for 2 questions at max from the audience.
So we do agree that the agentic AI is something that is like a future. But now, when you talk about specialized agentic AI, now the amount of data that you need to feed that, right? So where is the boundaries for sharing the data with the agentic AI?
I mean, see, I think at least I can speak on behalf of AWS or Amazon. So, if there are ways and patterns where even though you might be using like a public servers to train your models on specific things, you can, have sufficient guardrails so that that data, whatever you're using to train those models, is private to you and not shared outside the world, right? So that's a big requirement from a lot of customers. So we have, I think, enough provisions and mechanisms to do that actually. So that, even though it could be your own proprietary data, and we don't leak it to the general thing, and it can just be for you.
Still, the agentic AI requires access to everything, right? Like as a developer, you might not have access to all of the company resources, but now this agentic AI will have to have it to function.
You need to build your security guardrails, and it's fairly straightforward to build it, right? In terms of what you train on, how you train it, how you deploy it. Every agent piece, it's effectively a piece of code, right? Think of it as a function that's running, and that piece of code, you will have IAM access that basically says what it can read, what it can write, and how it will do it. Second is, typically when you run an agent, the agent will also have a guardrail engine that's going to say, hey, what's coming out of this, an eval model that's going to say what's coming out of this makes sense or not, right? That's how it will go. Second is, generally you would want to ensure most of the agents, as far as possible, don't take punitive action, like, don't go delete a server, don't go, drop a database, things like that, right? Or don't go delete a file, etc. Those things you can flag, mark, recommend, then you put human in the loop in terms of how the workflow would go. These are fairly straightforward to do.
Yeah. Actually, first of all, there is no difference between the agent and the human. The way that you give the permission, similar way that you give the permission to the AI agents also. There's no difference. Now, what level of data that you go and expose with what level of, let's say, the RBAC access or the authorization, something completely under your control. Now, you don't go and fine-tune the models, typically. You have the entire RAG pipeline with the enterprise data that you have, and obviously it has to have the enterprise architecture, which kind of supports this kind of thing. So, I mean, obviously you start to think about, especially when I'm bringing data from various departments, typically you share that data anyway during the meetings. So the question is, okay, I might not expose the revenue data to everybody, but like, what, the conversation that is happening with the customer is useful for me to be able to go and make that decision. So could you really go and just expose that information through the AI agentic or agentic framework, which is like more useful. So these things exist already now.
Okay, thanks. I think we are out of time. So, okay, quick question.
Hi, thank you. It was a very meaningful and wonderful session. I am so glad that I traveled 600 kilometers to attend today.
Thank you.
So, based on all the conversations that we have had, I felt like it's just another day in office, especially the 1 hour stand-up meeting and whatnot. So, I run a startup company called Vahai Technology in southern part of Tamil Nadu, where we all face these kind of issues on a day-to-day basis. So, if at all this is one productive day which I thought, or one word which I heard today, which would be productive for the entire office of mine, would be, sir, chatting with the code. I would really love to know at least one single word which can help me implement that in my office.
Kodi. Kodi is a model that's available publicly. It can chat with code. You basically have it installed on Visual Studio, VS Code, IDEA, whatever. Pick your editor, deploy Kodi on your this thing, open your source file, it'll start, you can chat with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This must have been the productive day of my life. Thank you.
By the way, Gemini 2.0 can also do that. But
I thought, Madhu, we agreed on no product pitches. No product pitches.
I'm not doing it. Kodi is also a Google model only. It's available publicly.
Okay, thank you so much, Madhu, Mani, Manoj. It was wonderful hosting you folks, and thanks for your valuable
Did you
time.
plan it out, 3 M's?
Sorry?
On this panel?
It was coincidence. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your valuable time and insights.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. This was one of the most insightful sessions that I've ever attended. A lot of truth bombs. And I think if there are designers in the room, I think you should pick up a lot of quotes that were said and make them into t-shirts. A lot of interesting stuff. All right.